In popular culture, Santa Claus is known as the jolly old man in a red suit who brings gifts to children around the world on Christmas Eve. But have you ever wondered about the origins of this beloved figure? Who is Santa Claus and where did his story begin? Delving into the rich tapestry of mythology, magic, and folklore, we will uncover the true origin story of Santa Claus through the lens of the comic series Klaus by writer Grant Morrison and artist Dan Mora. Morrison's Claus is not your ordinary Santa, who practices meditation, communing with the supernatural realm, and delving into altered states of consciousness. Artist Dan Mora's intricate and psychedelic color palette visually portrays Klaus's shamanic journeys, drawing parallels to Siberian shamans who consume the Amanita muscaria mushroom for their spiritual practices. In this video, we will embark on a journey to explore the origin story of Santa Claus as depicted in the 7-issue comic and explore a fresh and intriguing perspective on the world's most well-known superhero. Let's begin, shall we? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Becoming the harbinger of joy, a trapper's tale. The comic begins in medieval times. A man walks through the thick sheet of snow and leaves foot tracks as he puts one foot in front of the other. Covered in leather and fur to beat the chilly winds and the grim surroundings, this lone man drags a sled filled with skins, furs, and meat. After an arduous journey, he reaches the town of Grimsbig, a place that was as morose as the wilderness that he had just passed. Upon reaching the manned gate of the walled town of Grimsbig, the guards stop him and inspect his goods, and from this moment, you know something is terribly wrong with this town. Firstly, there's no signs of a man on the streets or anywhere else. The only men present in the town were the soldiers and the barkeeper. Our wintry trader, Klaus, enters the bar and asks the barkeeper, "Where are all the men?" Klaus learns that the men are working in the coal mines, which surprises him because it was the Yuletime festival and Grimsbig town stopped work during Yuletime, or at least that was the custom during Klaus's previous visits. If you didn't know, Yuletime is basically Yuletide, an archaic term for Christmas. Clearly, things had changed under this Baron Magnus, the new ruler of Grimsbig. Klaus then asks about the former barkeeper, an old man named Gunderson, but learns that Gunderson was killed because he asked too many tough questions to the authorities. Just as Klaus finished his beer and received advice from the barkeeper about keeping his mouth shut, Magnus's soldiers paid him a visit. They had assessed his wares and somehow decided that he was not welcome in Grimsbig. Despite being a muscular man with the capacity to knock down the puny soldiers with his fist, Klaus did not want any trouble. As the soldiers prepared to take away Klaus's belongings, he asked for payment but learned that it was not his day. He wondered who was in charge, who could be so cruel to turn an honest and happy town into a hornet's nest of thieves and liars in the name of soldiers. With spears pointed at him, he thought it was best to leave the place and maybe come another day. But Klaus's natural instinct was about to awaken, and he was standing at a turning point in his life, something that would change the world forever. One of the soldiers forbade a child to play in the street. It turns out that Grimsbig's Baron Magnus had passed a decree that prohibited kids from playing in the streets, but the heartless soldier did not stop there. He asked the kid to hand over a stone that the kid was playing with. Klaus was rightly infuriated. I mean, it was no toy, it was only a stone. But the soldier replied, "In the hands of a child, anything can become a toy. All toys are the property of Master Jonas for his sole fun and pleasure." Klaus's patience was reaching the tipping point, but he started to walk away. However, when a kid spoke to Klaus and begged for his help, one of the soldiers struck the child. Klaus lost it. He knocked 2 of the armed soldiers down but was soon overpowered by 5 others. Meanwhile, Sergeant Karl Linkvist of the Baron's army was looking at the events unfolding down below from the castle. He was expressing his discomfort about the treatment of strangers in the town of Grimsbig when Baron Magnus presented himself behind him. The man was dressed in black from top to bottom. The way he had systematically deprived the people of this town of joy and happiness reflected on his equally grim and evil face. Unlike Linkvist, he enjoyed the sadistic treatment of Klaus at the hands of his men. Down below, the soldiers had taken Klaus's warm clothing, tied his hand, and asked him to run for his life. They bet on it if he could make it past the tree line, and after a while they came looking for him. Klaus was using a rock to cut the ropes that tied his hand when the soldiers caught up to him. One of them shot an arrow at his left shoulder, but Klaus roared in anger instead of screaming in pain. He stood up and the soldiers asked him if he had any last words, but instead of speaking something, he whistled, and out of nowhere, a magnificent yet deadly white wolf wolves charged at the soldiers. As it mauled one of them to death, the others fled. The wolf was Lily, Klaus's pet. While she freed his hands, we were taken to Magnus's castle. At the castle, Magnus's son Jonas was unhappy about the toy he had received, a model town that the craftsman had worked for the entire year to bring to life. But the child was destroying his present. When Magnus went to visit, he heard the boy scream, "Why is nothing ever good enough? Why?" He wanted children of his own age around him. I wanted little people. It's no fun when there's no one else. And although Jonas did not know he was terribly alone, stuck in a huge castle with his sadistic father and his unhappy mother Dagmar, on the other hand, Klaus and Lily hunted a reindeer because they wanted food and warmth. The broth that Klaus prepared seemed to be laced with some mushrooms, you know, the special kind. I know this because he says to Lily this broth has healing magic in it. Later that night, while playing a flute-like instrument, Klaus couldn't help but think about the poor children of Grimsbig who had their Yule time cancelled and were left with no toys to play with. As the night grew darker, he was visited by the spirits of the forest and everything went psychedelic for Klaus. To his absolute surprise, he had crafted innumerable wooden toys that night in his sleep. Was it the spirits or was it the mushrooms? Whatever it was, he was still confused about the toys and what to do with them. The first time Santa brought presents. But you see, it did not take Klaus much time to figure out what purpose toys are supposed to fulfill. The walls that surrounded the town of Grimsbig had been crafted by the greatest craftsmen in days of old, and the soldiers believed that nothing could get past such skilled craftsmanship. However, when there's a will, there's a way, and Klaus managed to climb the wall. Not just that, he dropped a huge snowball on the two guards who were about to sound the alarm, but the chaos was enough for the other guards to be alerted. A few guards who managed to see the silhouette of Klaus with his bag full of toys thought he was a ghost or a monster or a hunchback. Nevertheless, Klaus surprised one of the guards and subdued him with his bag. But he didn't leave before turning one of Magnus's portraits into laughable graffiti. The interesting thing about this guard is his costume, which bears an uncanny resemblance to Santa's typical costume. Needless to say, this will have more meaning in the rest of the story. Upon noticing that one of their own had been taken down, the city gates were shut, which trapped Klaus inside. Anyway, the next morning brought a strange sight to the people of Grimsbig. The parents were horrified and shocked while the children were overwhelmed with joy at finding toys all over the streets. The elders thought that they were penalized for whatever was happening. You know, flying toy birds and everything. It wasn't before long that the word reached Magnus's ears and he came down from his castle to investigate the grim matter of toys. The soldiers believed it had to be an inside job because the wall was unscalable, and they questioned the townspeople. And one little girl found the courage to tell Magnus it was the Yulerness, sir, the Yuletime spirit. Magnus became further infuriated and ordered Linkvist to get to the bottom of the issue. But that was not all. He confiscated all the toys so that they could be taken to Jonas. Meanwhile, Jonas was sad that the other kids were having fun. It was not like he wanted to share the fun. On the contrary, he wanted the kids to stop having fun. But when he saw a cart full of toys coming his way, his lips burst into a grim grin. But to his utter dismay, the toys didn't bring him joy. I mean, they wouldn't fly or work for him as they did for the other kids. While Jonas was busy destroying the toys left and right and center, his mother's attention was attracted by a small wooden bird. Dagmar noticed that the toy bird was just like the one she had prized for so long, hidden safely in a wooden box, and she immediately figures that this mysterious toy man was none other than Klaus. But what's their backstory? Well, sit tight. Down on the streets, the hunt for Klaus was in full swing. Magnus's men sent Olav, their strongest and most ferocious soldier, to bring down Klaus, but he easily trapped him and turned him into a snowman. When Magnus got to the spot, he noticed that the mystery man had dropped his sack, which had his scent. Wasting no time, Magnus ordered his pack of hunting dogs to be brought in, and it wasn't before long that Klaus found himself cornered by the dogs. An evil rises deep within the minds. The hunting dogs chased Klaus to a dead end and would have mauled him, but something happened and the dogs started whimpering. Lily had managed to sneak into the town and her mere presence scared the canines away. Klaus knew it wasn't safe for Lily to stay within the walled town, so he quickly sent her away before trying to escape. Klaus had managed to instill fear amongst the guards. While some said he was a shape-shifting werewolf, others believed he was a ghost. But Linkvist was a practical man and knew that no ghost would leave intricately carved toys on the doorsteps of Grimsbig's poorest families. On the other hand, the kids of Grimsbig had found new hope in the form of this unknown spirit of Yuletime. They had started writing their wishes on parchments and throwing them into their chimneys, believing that the hot air would take those wishes to the northern lights where Santa lived. But the kids had no idea what was cooking in the coal mines and Magnus's twisted head. He had already started to suspect that his wife Dagmar was hiding something. In fact, she owned a toy which was practically treason under Magnus's rule. On the other hand, Klaus knew that he had to find another way to deliver the toys in secrecy. He knew he needed help from the forest spirits, so he prepared the same broth as he did a few nights ago, using the forest herbs, and it wasn't before long that he found himself in another trance-like state. The spirits of ice and forests had heard his calls and they showed him a path. Meanwhile, Magnus took out a grimoire from his library and entered the deepest part of his coal mines. Ready for the big shock, are you? He was talking to a voice, and from what he told the voice, it became evident that the fate that he had brought to Grimsbig was intentional and a small part of an elaborate evil plan. He had been asked by the voice to make Grimsbig a town without cheer. Furthermore, he was making the men toil so hard at the mines that they were about to meet their deaths. And Magnus was preparing to bring this evil force into the world of the living, into Grimsbig. But time was running out for him, you see. He had pushed his people so far and they had nothing to lose now. And that, my friend, is the time when revolutions and rebellions start. Later that night, Klaus got to meet Magdar, and it's time for the big reveal. Klaus should have died at infancy, but he had a purpose. Long ago, soldiers from Grimsbig found a woman frozen to her death. One of the soldiers, named Carl, was shocked and surprised to find out that the lady was holding a child close to her bosom, and this child was alive. Carl adopts him and names him Klaus, meaning victory of the people. As Klaus grows up, he befriends Dagmar, the Lord's daughter, and the two become inseparable. Klaus gives Dagmar a wooden toy bird, and they share many happy memories together, much to the jealousy of the young Magnus, who looks on from a distance. Years later, Klaus becomes a captain of the town's guard, while Magnus becomes increasingly envious of him. Magnus plots against Klaus, poisoning the Lord and framing Klaus for the crime. Klaus is driven outside the walls of Grimsbig to die, but he is saved by Lily, whom he had saved when she was just a pup. In the present day, Klaus sneaks into Dagmar's room and confronts her, demanding to know why she believed him guilty and chose Magnus over him. Dagmar is speechless, unable to answer his questions. The two of them have a rather happy reunion, and Dagmar finds joy once again. She is happy now that she knows that the love of her life did not murder her father and that he did not betray her. However, Klaus surprises her by giving her a single toy for Jonas. Jonas had been hating all the toys and saw no meaning in them, no value, and no happiness. At first, Jonas is reluctant and angry, but Dagmar sits down with him and encourages him to tell a story using the toy. The two of them created a story about a monstrous humanoid and a dragon who looked like a bird. The two were playing. Jonas and Dagmar were finally happy, but Magnus couldn't have it. He had to get things under control as soon as possible. You see, he was the lord of a town, but the town had a suspicious revolutionary who prowled the night at will. Revolt was spreading in his town like wildfire. There were literally wolves at the door, and on top of it all, the king was to arrive in the next 2 days, so Magnus killed his wife and son's moment of happiness. He has a plan to trap Santa using Jonas to write a wish letter. The tension rises as the story unfolds, with Klaus determined to clear his name and Magnus scheming to capture him. While Magnus carries on with his plan, Klaus goes to meet Carl Linkfist. He was the same man who had adopted Klaus and given him a life, a purpose. Carl expresses grief over not being able to stop Magnus and his evil schemes, but now that he has met Klaus, he feels more confident about the future of Grimsbig. A servant of evil. Later, Jonas tells his mother that he did not wish to write a letter that would trick Santa into getting captured, but he was frightened by Magnus, who used the grimoire on Jonas, his very son. Meanwhile, Magnus was back at the mine, where he was begging the evil voice for some more time and strength. On the other hand, Jonas and his mother were looking for the grimoire when Magnus appeared before them, half crazed and completely paranoid about a revolt and about being surrounded by enemies on all fronts. He believed that the king and his men were coming to Grimsbig to kill him. He sent Jonas away and spoke directly to Dagmar, revealing that the voice he has been speaking to has promised him strength if it was freed from the Black Rock 2 days later at midwinter, the same day that the king was to arrive. On the other hand, Klaus was on his Santa business, dropping little bundles of joy for the kids. This time around, Klaus had stolen the uniform of a Grimsbig elite guard. Blending in with the other soldiers, he was able to sneak around in plain sight. He penetrated into the coal mine and relieved the guards of their duties, maybe not in the way that they would have preferred. He asked the men working there to go back to their homes and families and celebrate the festival of Yuletime. Go back to your families and celebrate the return of light from darkness, the way it was meant to be. Klaus had managed to spark the fire of revolt amidst the men, and although they wanted him to lead them, he was just a man bringing toys to kids, ensuring that joy was not forgotten in his old town. After this, Klaus burns the mine down in the hope that the atrocities on the men would finally stop if there was no mine to work in. Back at the castle, Magnus finally becomes a villain worthy of taking on Klaus Claus and his might. From a sadist ruler, he transitions into the servant of a purely evil voice. He reveals how he made a deal with the devil. In return for its freedom, Magnus would be bestowed with unparalleled strength, wealth, and knowledge. However, his ways have pushed him too far, to a point from where there's no coming back. Meanwhile, Klaus finally reads the letter that Magnus had made him write. Klaus was tricked into going inside a remote cabin where Magnus's men were already waiting to strike. Klaus had fallen into a trap, and despite his attempts to escape them, he got shot with poisonous arrows, only to be found by a child who helped him escape the city and into the chilly wilderness, where they met Lily. But Magnus was hot on Klaus's trail. Back in the town, Magnus's men were rounding up all the kids of Grimsbig so that they could be taken to the castle. But why? Klaus undergoes a profound transformation. The next issue begins with the king's army marching on Grimsbig. While Dagmar prepares to leave the castle with Jonas, she has finally understood that any place without the shadow of her evil husband is safe. On the other hand, Klaus lies hurt, his face contorted in pain, but his mind races with determination. He knows that Magnus and his guards must be closing in, and time is running out. But he also remembers Lily's unwavering support and Finn Mikkelson's bravery, and he draws strength from their friendship. Lily and Finn struggle through the white wilderness, dragging Klaus's limp body behind him. They finally reach a secluded cabin in the snowy woods. Klaus's wound, poisoned by Magnus and his guards, is severe, but Finn does his best to treat it. Knowing that time is of the essence, as Klaus begins to grasp reality, he sends Finn to look for Lily, who had run outside, but the child and the wolf are attacked by Magnus and his men. They shoot several arrows into Lily, who runs away, and Finn gets taken by the guards. They burn the cabin and leave Klaus to freeze to death on a frozen lake. But during this boastful monologue to Klaus, Magnus reveals something dark and sinister. The wolf will be shot and stuffed, the miners will work until they fall, and your boy there will be my dark accomplice. Magnus leaves with Finn, who gets thrown into a large cell where there were other children feasting on sweets and candies. Finn could see through Magnus's newfound generosity. He understood that the children were being fattened like sheep to the slaughter, but then his words fell on deaf ears to children who had been left bereft of any happiness for a long time. They just wanted to enjoy what they could. As night falls, a coal miner who had been driven close to insanity by the guards finally cracks the rocks and releases a massive demon, who bursts into the main hall of the castle, demanding the feast that had been promised to it, the captive children. Of course, this was Krampus, the half-goat and half-human demon who devoured children. Back at the castle, the king and the other lords had arrived. They accused Magnus of cruelty, black magic, and exorbitant taxes, and warned that if he didn't surrender, he would be looking at war. But Magnus knew that he had nothing to fear now that Klaus was supposedly dead and the Krampus had been released from its prison, which is when Magnus's castle was thrown into chaos as Krampus made its entry. Back at the lake outside Grimsbig, Klaus, who has been visited by the mystical forest spirits, undergoes a profound transformation. He is imbued with newfound strength and resolve, with a deep sense of duty to make things right. Determined to right the wrongs in Grimsbig and make a difference, no matter the cost, he sets off towards Grimsbig, determined to save the children and confront Magnus and his evil ally. Klaus vs. Krampus, the climatic battle. In a dramatic turn of events, Finn, the brave and resourceful boy who aided Klaus earlier, takes charge and leads the other captive children through the dark corridors of the foreboding castle. His courageous spirit and quick thinking shine as he navigates the maze-like halls, determined to save his fellow captives. In the grand main hall, Magnus's initial excitement at the demon's arrival quickly turns to horror as it viciously attacks Jonas. Desperation sets in as Magnus frantically searches the grimoire for a spell to command the demon, only to be met with a chilling revelation. The demon laughs in defiance, revealing that it had used Magnus as a pawn to gain its freedom, and that he has no power over it. The look of betrayal on Magnus's face is palpable as he realizes he has been deceived. Dagmar comes to Jonas's aid and distracts the demon with a well-aimed arrow, buying Jonas precious moments to escape. He urges him to run, and Jonas meets up with the other fleeing children as they try to find a way out of the castle. However, their escape is short-lived as they are cornered by the monstrous Krampus, the fearsome creature that hungers for the souls of bad children. Just when all seems lost, Klaus appears in a dazzling display of heroism. He swoops in on a flying sleigh pulled by majestic white wolves, with Lily, the leader of the pack, at the helm. Klaus wields a mighty sword ready to take on the demon and protect the children. A thrilling battle ensues as Klaus confronts the demon, risking his own life to protect the innocent. However, Magnus, consumed by his lust for power, shocks everyone and betrays his own child by stabbing Klaus from behind. He demands the that the demon fulfill its end of the bargain, granting him the kingship and the love of his family and the people. In a desperate attempt to get what he has promised, he asked the Krampus to give him what he deserved. The demon complies, unleashing its fiery breath and incinerating Magnus in a spectacular display of wrath. The crowd rejoices and even hails the monster, for the Baron was dead. The demon then captures Jonas and transforms Klaus' sleigh into a dark chariot pulled by menacing hellhounds. With a maniacal laugh, the demon takes to the sky, proclaiming that all bad children now belong to it. Klaus, however, rises again, revealing that the forest spirits have granted him immortality. With unwavering resolve, he leaps onto the rooftop and jumps onto the chariot, engaging in a breathtaking battle with the demon. The tension is palpable as Klaus faces off against the formidable foe, using all his skills and courage to protect Jonas and defeat the demon. In a climatic moment, Klaus utters his trademark "ho ho ho" and delivers a fatal blow, beheading the demon. Its lifeless body hurtles back to the earth, and Klaus returns to his restored sleigh with Jonas by his side. Dagmar, now determined to right the wrongs of her husband's rule, pledges to be regent of the town, with Klaus as her trusted advisor. The Yuletide festival is held every year thereafter, with joy and merriment restored to the town. Even Jonas, who has learned the importance of selflessness and compassion, joins in the festivities and plays with the other children, no longer consumed by selfishness. As the years pass, Dagmar ages gracefully, but Klaus remains unchanged. After Dagmar's funeral, Jonas, now the respected lord of the town, bids farewell to Klaus as he prepares to depart in its sleigh, spreading joy. How powerful is Klaus? Klaus, the shaman Santa, possesses a range of extraordinary abilities that are crucial to his universe. First and foremost, he is granted immortality by the forest spirits, rendering him ageless and impervious to injuries, allowing him to endure and survive in the face of immense challenges. In addition to his immortality, Klaus demonstrates a profound mastery of the Grimoire, a book of powerful spells and incantations. He skillfully reads from the ancient tome, utilizing its arcane knowledge to command and control demons and other mystical creatures, showcasing his deep understanding of the dark arts. Klaus's prowess with a sword is also remarkable. He wields a great blade with unparalleled skill and finesse, utilizing it to engage in epic battles against formidable foes, showcasing his unmatched swordsmanship and combat abilities. And it makes sense because before he became who he is, he was a fine soldier and a military leader. Furthermore, Klaus exhibits a unique connection and control over wolves, specifically a pack of 8 white wolves that pull his sleigh. While Lily was a friend to him, control over other wolves was a gift to him by the spirits. He commands these majestic animals with authority and precision, harnessing their strength and agility to aid him in his quest to protect his town and its inhabitants. Lastly, Klaus demonstrates a remarkable resistance to fire. When confronting the demon Krampus in the upper atmosphere, he remains unaffected by its fiery breath, indicating a supernatural resistance or immunity to fire, further highlighting his exceptional abilities. These superpowers collectively make Klaus a formidable and legendary figure, imbued with otherworldly abilities that aid him in his quest to bring justice and happiness to the town and its people, and portray him as a powerful and awe-inspiring character in the story. Marvelous verdict. Klaus is practically a fine blend of myth, magic, and legend as he emerges as a barbarian, Santa Claus drawing inspiration from Siberian shamanism and Nordic culture. Set in a mystical winter landscape, Klaus is depicted as a powerful figure who delivers hope and joy to the world. The awe-inspiring storytelling is further elevated by the painstaking research, time, and sensitivity put into crafting Klaus's character and world. From the Siberian shamanic influences to the Nordic cultural references, Klaus is a visually stunning and thematically rich comic series that takes readers on a mind-bending and psychedelic journey, reimagining Santa Claus as a mystical and powerful force for good in a winter wonderland of magic and mythology. All in all, I felt like a child while reading the comic, and in all the good ways. If you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.